Ever since 2005, developer TT Games have been a mainstay for the LEGO game franchise with the first LEGO Star Wars in the 6th generation of consoles. And with that success, the series has since expanded into other franchises like Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. And thankfully, not every LEGO game is exactly an adaptation of its source material, as they would show with their games based on superheroes. Obviously starting with DC Comics, of course, because Warner Brothers, but also with DC's main rival, Marvel Comics, with the latter being what I'm going to talk about today. The story of LEGO Marvel Superheroes follows said heroes after the Silver Surfer arrives on Earth and getting blasted by Dr. Doom. The Silver Surfer loses his powers and his board gets destroyed into many cosmic bricks. Worse yet, Dr. Doom seems to be a part of a greater dark cause led by Loki, leaving it up to Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. to unite the largest superhero team possible. From Avengers such as Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, the Hulk, Thor, and Spider-Man, to the Fantastic Four, and even the X-Men. As said at the start, the game follows an original storyline not based on any comic issue whatsoever, but does reference certain storylines and hell, looks aesthetically like the films, particularly the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And like any LEGO game, it's simple, funny, and it works. The gameplay is what you would expect out of a LEGO game. A simple, cooperative platformer where you must complete simple objectives to beat the level, with the option to gather collectibles, but you may not get them all the first round if you lack characters with the needed abilities. Alongside that is an openly explorable New York City, which serves as the hub world. In a similar fashion as other open world games, there are many smaller side quests to do, with several bonus missions that unlock after the story, containing the wacky narration of Deadpool. And with all this, compared to some of the past LEGO games I played, going through all the missions alone is a bit lengthy. But as with even the shorter LEGO games, it's complemented by quite a bit of extra content, making it worth replaying for completionists. And speaking of variety, wow! There is a lot in its character roster. Sure, there is a bit of an aesthetic that closely resembles what the Marvel Cinematic Universe aims for, but with the appearance of the X-Men, Deadpool, Fantastic Four, Blade, Daredevil, and even some not as well-known characters in Marvel's backlog, it's perhaps one of the most varied Marvel games to date. And thankfully, most if not all characters all have their most known abilities. Like Wolverine with his claws, scent, and regeneration, Iron Man with his suits and their gadgets, Captain America with his vibranium shield, Spider-Man with his spidey sense and web swinging, you get the idea. Now, the simplistic gameplay of LEGO still plays as well as you'd expect here, but sadly, I find to have more fun with single player in this one than I do co-op in many of the past ones, mainly with how the split screen is set up. Sure, it's there so we don't have to wait for the other player who's trailing behind, but is there any reason the split screen must move around as your characters move? It just makes it so disorienting and confusing to see. But this isn't a problem if you have the Wii U version of the game, where each player has their own screen. First player with the Wii U pad, second player with the Pro Controller, and that to me makes the co-op a bit more pleasant. But at the very least, I don't think the split screen should go away, at least try to keep it more stationary like other multiplayer games with split screen. And on the tech front, the game does crash on occasion, but you almost forget they happen. Putting that aside, the graphics of the game look gorgeous, as the LEGO minifigures look pretty realistic for their time, and the game's environment, even with details like the city lights of New York City being so vibrant, and like much of the comics that inspired it, burst with color. Overall, piece it together and LEGO Marvel Superheroes is yet another worthy entry in the LEGO games by TT Games. Really only bogged down by its dizzying split screen, its variety as fan service to Marvel Superheroes and fans of the series should never go unnoticed. LEGO Marvel Superheroes gets an 8 out of 10.
As of this recording, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is currently on its 5th phase. So of course, like with the LEGO games, there are a lot of movies and now shows, and has largely been successful, much to the dismay of some public figures. Speaking of LEGO, with the success of the first LEGO Marvel Superheroes, of course, TT Games and Disney's top rival, Warner Brothers, had to make a follow-up. Though not yet the big sequel, they would however cash in on the MCU's success and make a LEGO game that's more of a tie-in with the MCU than the former game, being LEGO Marvel's Avengers. How does this spin-off fare? Let's find out. The story mainly tells the events of the first two Avengers films, primarily told how the Avengers dealt with Thor's adoptive brother Loki, as well as the techno-villain Ultron. But in the middle, you have a flashback moment with Captain America as told in his film, The First Avenger. It's a little off-putting at first as it covers the introduction of Age of Ultron first before it gets to the first film, but for the most part sticks to the stories they are adapting in typical light-hearted LEGO form, so it works. The gameplay, as one expects from LEGO at this point, before the overhaul that is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, is the simple action-adventure platformer that, rooted with the classic LEGO Star Wars, go through the levels using the characters and their unique abilities, try and collect what you can, and anything you missed, you go back to collect in free play. Maybe bring a friend along in split-screen co-op, or if you're a Wii U owner, one player has their own screen. And even some of the DLC adding on more levels from various other Marvel properties, from comics to TV. But also what you'd expect is some minor additions with character abilities. For instance, there is a more gray-tinted material that characters like Ultron can only clear. There is also characters with speed abilities like Quicksilver that can run on speed pads, and in addition, practically make cars almost useless when you're doing most driving segments in the open world mode. And speaking of the open world, while it does reuse Manhattan from the first game, they do some changes with different quests and even change up the setting to a sunset. However, they did add some new smaller hub worlds, including the Lincoln Memorial of Washington, D.C., the shores of Johannesburg in South Africa, Tony Stark's abode in Malibu, California, Clint Barton's family farm, the ruined city of Novigrad in Sokovia, Asgard, and even a shield base in New Mexico. So it adds some variety at least. In any case, it's still decent fun with how much they cram in this game. Visually, again as one expects from this license, is very colorful as the blocks themselves and looks similar to the prior LEGO Marvel game, so there is not much to say. The sound, however, is a bit more of a mix. The background music consists of archives from the films and the prior LEGO Marvel game, with so few quote-unquote new compositions, but they all still fit, so tough to complain. In addition, even the voices are mixed too. Some of the main characters have voice archives from the films, others are new recordings from either actors of the source material or professional voice actors. Kinda like how LEGO Lord of the Rings did, except a little more intertwined to the story.
Yes, Schmidt, I will not fail you again.
Steve? Captain Rogers! Blast! I hope the radio might have sorted itself out by now.
This is Agent Sharon Carter of S.H.I.E.L.D., Special Service. You see that lovely Malibu penthouse? Well, that's where I live with Tony Stark.
This is Agent Melinda May with a Special S.H.I.E.L.D. report. The following information is highly classified and should only be accessed by agents with experience of Season 2 events. You have been spoiler warned.
You'd think that Tony Stark would be happy that he helped save the world from the Chitauri, but something about him's different now.
It's another win for the good guys. Normally I'd keep score by putting little marks on the walls, but I kind of try not to do that so much anymore.
I suppose the only thing I don't like is that, as usual with LEGO games, there are occasional glitches. Nothing game-breaking, but really annoying. Like, when I was doing my playthrough, I had an annoying glitch where Captain America remained stuck in an animation during my main campaign run. I had to restart it and edit out of my playthrough videos. More so, when I wanted to try and 100% the game, some moments like when a required superpower doesn't work to grab a mini-kit, or a car was stuck when trying to move forward. At least with the right persistence, the main game is still beatable, as it is obtainable to beat it 100% with all achievements, but good lord, Warner Brothers, let TT Games check for more bugs. In the end, with the amount of collectibles you get from gold bricks, more playable characters, which all aren't from the MCU, though don't expect characters tied with Fox at the time, and of course, finding Stan Lee, LEGO Marvel's Avengers is still decent fun, even if it's not as good as LEGO Marvel Superheroes. If you're gonna get any version though, the Wii U version may not be the one to get in the modern day due to Nintendo shutting down eShop servers with no way to get the DLC, which you couldn't get all the packs for even when it was online. Though the co-op via having your own screen is nice, as it was with prior LEGO games on the platform. But for a definitive package with all the DLC, you can find in the LEGO Marvel Collection alongside the 2 LEGO Marvel Superhero games. In any case, it's worth a look.
Here we are. After reviewing and playing through past LEGO Marvel titles, I figured I might as well go ahead and visit what is, at least right now, the last game of the trilogy, being LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2. How does this fare? Let's find out. The story of the game takes place after the first title. The Guardians of the Galaxy are called into action, responding to an attack by Kang the Conqueror, who would end up invading Earth after the Avengers help Nick Fury once again. During Kang's attack, the Avengers and the world is split, forming into a new location, Chronopolis, which is a world consisting of fragments of not only other worlds such as Asgard and Sakaar, but also universes as evidenced by the differing variants of New York City, such as New York Noir and Nueva York. Hell, adding the Old West and medieval England. Regardless, it's up to the Marvel heroes to stop Kang and his antics. Not a bad storyline by any means, as it's still that over-the-top, humor-filled plot to expect from LEGO titles. On to the gameplay, and LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2 follows on much of the classic formula of TT Games LEGO titles, pre-Skywalker Saga but post-Batman 2, I think. And there is an open world to explore, and it's how you get to your objectives, while your levels are the basic LEGO platformer fare since the first LEGO Star Wars. It's for the most part as you'd expect, but in some cases in the hub world, you'll have to do an extra objective or two before the level starts. Especially true with the bonus levels with Gwenpool narrating. Reasons as to why, more on that later, but still. Wander, build, solve puzzles, have the right powers, come back later when you have the characters unlocked for extras, you get it. Sad to say, but I don't think I like the hub world. Even thematically, it just feels too cluttered and kind of a dull circle. I'd rather be exploring plain old New York City, or at least smaller hubs representing these realms. Not a great merger. What's also not great is that the game is a victim of legal meddling on two fronts. One, it was hit by the 2016 SAG-AFTRA strikes, so all the voice actors you heard in LEGO Marvel 1 and Avengers, not here. Granted, the voice cast featured in this game aren't bad, but still. To game publishers, pay your people. Actors, game devs, everyone. 2. It was also a victim of the Fox-Disney feud, which as a result had Disney forced game devs to not use certain Marvel characters under the film rights under 20th Century Fox. Meaning, no X-Men and no Fantastic Four, despite their influence since their comic inception. And it wasn't just LEGO and TT Games. Disney were strict about this to Capcom even, and it hurt Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. As much as I hate the buyout, at least it ended when Old Man Murdoch decided to sell that wing of Fox to Disney, only to create another entertainment wing that gave us Tubi, but I digress. Now that isn't to say the game is bad. Far from it, as the gameplay is still very entertaining. Plenty of side quests to do add for more replayability, even though for the bonus levels, Gwenpool as the narrator is kind of annoying. And what's more, they finally fixed the character customization. No longer will powers and abilities be attached to certain LEGO pieces. Instead, you get to pick your powers. You get to pick your equipment. Clothing pieces are only for aesthetics, etc. It's not without limits, as not all powers and clothing pieces are there, but with what you can, it's a vast improvement over past LEGO games since LEGO Star Wars 2. Too bad TT Games sacked it for Skywalker Saga. I don't get that. Moving on to the graphics, and though I criticize the open world choices, I do however like the shifts in visual tone made when you go into places like New York Noir, and it's all of a sudden in black and white. Hell, when most of the other tints change, it remains colorful, well-detailed game that still feels like a collection of LEGO toys in a playset. Even on the Switch, both in handheld and in dock mode, the game looks great. The soundtrack of the game, for a feel not unlike the MCU, particularly if James Gunn was directing, as they've chosen 2 licensed tracks heard in films like the first Guardians of the Galaxy with Come and Get Your Love by Redbone, and the second one with Mr. Blue Sky by ELO, which are classics, though there remains original composed tracks credited to Ian Livingstone, which fit the overall mood of Marvel. To end, one other thing I don't like about this game is the choice to replace Deadpool, again due to the Fox-Disney feud with Gwenpool. I don't know, even knowing Deadpool is kind of deliberately obnoxious as much as I like him, I can't say Gwenpool is as funny as a character. It definitely feels like she was chosen way last minute to replace Wade. Overall, despite even the legal shortcomings, LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2 is a fun title to be had. Nowhere near as good as the first LEGO Marvel title, but better than the Avengers game. Still worth a look if you find it for cheap, or better, pick up the LEGO Marvel Superheroes trilogy found on PS4 and Xbox.